Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. It's been a couple days since the shooting of the ICE detention center in Dallas, Texas. And as I promised you, in my very first video was my intention here is to not be the first to jump on something. I really want to let the facts come out and then mull those facts over as they do come out. So as we all know, a shooter opened fire on a van that had detained migrants, I guess, in a van, and a shooter on a rooftop reports are saying about 150 to 200 yards away, opened fire on that van. 2 detainees were injured. 1 was struck and killed. Both the 2 that were struck are still in the hospital as of today on the 26th. So 2 days later, and they are both alive, but in critical condition. The initial reports coming out of Dallas were pretty straightforward, with the bullets, of course, being sharpied on with anti-ICE, literally anti-ICE propaganda. It literally just said anti-ICE, which a lot of that I've been seeing seems to be a little clunky and a little strange. I'm not saying that I'm not in the camp that believes that the FBI wrote that on there. I fully believe that a deranged person would just write something deranged on there. And someone that is just not very eloquent in getting their thoughts and their feelings across might just put on there. And someone that is going to do a mass shooting like this, a targeted mass shooting like this, they don't know how to express their feelings. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to interpret the world around them. So with that being said, the initial reports coming out were nothing of any substance from police or the FBI. The first reports that we got were that there was a shooting and that the suspect was killed. He killed himself. And of course, they had to pull Ted Cruz off of an airplane because I'm sure right as he realized that something was happening in his state, he was probably on a plane to Mexico. But this is what he had to say.
Politically motivated violence is wrong. It's 2 weeks ago today that we saw a political assassination in Utah that tore the heart out of much of this country. This is the third shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop.
And as you can see there, this must stop. This must stop. Obviously, it's not a very hot take from Mr. Ted Cruz here. He doesn't ever seem to think before he speaks, and again, as any politician is going to do, right or left, they're going to say meaningless platitudes. This has to stop. Violence is senseless, and we hope that it doesn't happen again. Basically, thoughts and prayers. Of course, it didn't stop there. They like to, and they meaning politicians, like to immediately point fingers because they cannot be shown to not know what's going on, even when they do not know what is going on. It was very clear at this point that no one, in fact, knew what was going on, but they cannot let us, the populace, think that they don't know what is going on. So, of course, fingers had to be pointed.
Every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop.
Because everyone knows that the world is black and white, red versus blue, and if ICE is on our side, it obviously must have been someone from their side. They, them, the other.
To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop.
Calling for people to go after their families, obviously, that's a problem. The doxing of these agents and whatnot, that is something that is free and open. You can communicate to people within your community. That is allowed. That is something that is allowed under the Constitution. You are allowed to share information. You are granted your right to free speech. Free speech is not freedom from consequences. Freedom of speech is in the Constitution for the government to not be able to infringe upon your ability to speak freely. So when the government says that this needs to stop, that is what they're after.
This has very real consequences. Look, in America, we disagree. That's fine. That's the democratic process. But your political opponents are not Nazis. My understanding is the details.
Political opponents are not Nazis. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, I'm sorry, it's a duck. If you don't want to be compared to Nazis, you do not want ICE to be compared to the brown shirts, the Gestapo, don't have them doing warrantless raids, do not have them pulling patients out of hospitals, do not have them pulling students out of schools without showing ID, wearing masks.
Details of who the victims are still being ascertained, so I don't want to go ahead of law enforcement releasing these details. What they have.
But he's going to do it anyway because he's a politician, and again, he cannot be shown to not know what is going on. So he points a bunch of fingers and then ends it at the end of his minute and a half time here. He says, "Well, I don't want to go ahead of law enforcement."
They have said is that no law enforcement was injured, and so that's a natural inference, but I don't know that.
And of course, at that point, we didn't really know any details. And like any sensible citizen, I did not jump on this right away. I, of course, let everything come out, and I, like everyone else, wanted to know what went on and what happened and what was in this person's mind, because writing anti-ICE on a round seems to have a very clear and distinct motive. He is anti-ICE. But again, as I say in my real life, and you will hear me repeat here, the world is not black and white. It is not red versus blue. The blue side, the Democratic side, the liberal side, the progressive side. There are, again, I just listed 3 different forms of blue, of left. There are different flavors. There are different varieties. There are people that are extremely left and that are anarchists. There are people extremely right who are anarchists. There are people that are left and right, red and blue, that are nihilists. And like we saw with the Charlie Kirk shooting, with who I now firmly believe was Tyler Robinson, the shooter of Charlie Kirk, you cannot account for crazy. These young men are not being radicalized by AOC saying whatever she's saying. These people are not being radicalized by Democrats on the House floor. They're just not. The Democratic Party is milquetoast. They can't fight their way out of a wet paper bag. They are supposed to be voting on a spending bill, and their whole strategy is, you better agree to this or we're going to vote for it anyway. That's their strategy. These people don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to organize. They don't know how to run a government. They don't know how to do much of anything, and that's why that they keep tripping over themselves over and over and over again. And you're going to tell me that they're radicalizing people? I'm sorry. It's just not happening. So these people, just like the Charlie Kirk shooting, Tyler Robinson, he was not radicalized by the left. He was in Utah. He was brought up LDS. He was raised in a Republican family, MAGA or not. He was raised around guns. And when you are raised around guns, and I'm not saying this for everyone, this is not a nebulous statement, but there are, of course, the fringes, just like the fringes of left and right. There are the fringes that don't know how to express themselves. And when you are raised around guns and taught, well, you can be a good guy with a gun when there's a bad guy with a gun, or a bad guy doing something you don't like, and this is how you take action, this is the inevitable outcome. You are going to get people that are in that middle, in that gray, these disenfranchised young men that don't have anywhere to go. They cannot find reliable employment. They are being pushed out of jobs by immigrants. That is happening. That is a thing that happens, and my cohorts on the left might not want to hear that, but that is what happens. There is an incentive structure to not hire Americans, and that is what's happening. This shooter was an unemployed 29-year-old who was looking at moving back in with his parents. He had nothing. And this is something that is systemic. This is happening all over the place. This is not an isolated incident. And like I said with the Charlie Kirk shooting with Tyler Robinson, these people are going to become more and more prevalent. These folks that don't seem to live on the left and on the right, these people that don't seem to have a very large online footprint, these seemingly normal people that just feel disenfranchised, that don't see a future for themselves. They're 30 years old and don't have a 401k. They don't have a job. They don't have anything. So this is a problem that I don't see getting better. I see this getting worse. And like I said in my very first video, we're going to see more of this, and more shootings are going to happen. And we can't tell where, and we can't tell when. And you can't have a drone over every single rooftop at all times. So Ken Klippenstein here has a great article, kind of rounds off a couple of the rough edges, in my opinion. And he was able to contact and interview people that were in this man's life. Joshua Jahn. So he was able to get in touch with some folks who had known him for his entire life. One of them has known him since he was 8. So we're going to go through this. The deadly sniper attack on Dallas ICE facility this morning seems straightforward, with anti-ICE engraved on the unused bullets recovered from the scene, per the FBI. But after interviewing several of the alleged shooter's former friends, the picture just isn't so clear. Within minutes of the shooting, FBI Director Kash Patel posted on X, "While the investigation is ongoing, an initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind this attack. See the photo below." And this is obviously the infamous photo that everyone has by this point seen, where it was drawn in pen. I do firmly believe that the shooter, Joshua Jahn here, probably did write that himself. And they will go into detail as to why they think that this happened. President Trump responded to the shooting by, of course, blaming the radical left, vowing to sign another executive order to dismantle what he called domestic terrorism networks. This comes at the heels of another executive order he signed this week, designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, as I previously reported. And of course, we all know that now Antifa is being labeled as a domestic terrorist organization. And I find it funny because there is no central leadership to Antifa. It is anyone that has anti-fascist views. There is no central funding for this. And I've seen some talk about, oh, there's GoFundMes to get people out of jail. Yes, you are allowed to do that. You are allowed to bail people out. It's been happening since this country was founded. That is protected. He also includes the, I don't think this was on Twitter. I think this was on Truth Social. And of course, this is our president, Donald J. Trump. I have been briefed on the deadly shooting at the ICE field office in Dallas, Texas. It has now been revealed the deranged shooter wrote anti-ICE on his shell casings. This is despicable. The brave men and women of ICE are just trying to do their jobs and remove the worst of the worst criminals out of our country, but they are facing an unprecedented increase in threats, violence, and attack by deranged radical leftists. This violence is the result of the radical left Democrats constantly demonizing law enforcement, calling for ICE to be demolished, and comparing ICE officers to Nazis. The continuing violence from the radical left terrorists, see how he keeps escalating this. He keeps escalating this wordage. He keeps, first it's deranged radicalized, then it's radical left Democrats, and now it's radical left terrorists. It's escalating language. in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination must be stopped. ICE officers and other members of law enforcement are under grave threat. We have already declared Antifa a terrorist organization, and I will be signing an executive order this week to dismantle these domestic terrorist networks. Good luck with that. I am calling on all Democrats to stop this rhetoric against ICE and Americans' law enforcement right now. The Trump administration is committed to backing law enforcement, strong borders, securing our homeland, deporting violent illegal criminals, and fully rooting out the left-wing Democratic terrorism that is terrorizing our country. Again, with the escalation. Thank you for the attention to this matter, naturally. Vice President J.D. Vance, meanwhile, says, we know that this person was politically motivated. Again, I don't know how they would know that right off the rip, but they seem to know more than even the police do 2 days later. On the off chance the shooting wasn't what it looked like, I reached out to people who knew the gunman. This is what journalism is about. 29-year-old Joshua Jahn. 3 who knew him since at least middle school agreed to speak to me on the condition that I not name them, corroborating their friendship with photos and other records. Their accounts paint a picture of someone with a vaguely libertarian bent who despised both major political parties and politicians generally, including Trump, but who didn't engage with politics beyond that. He preferred edgy humor, video games, and the message board 4chan, all of which he became increasingly steeped in as he withdrew from social life, as well as their own friendships several years ago. Again, probably over COVID, everyone was home, everyone just got, not everyone, but especially young men, got dragged into whatever rabbit holes they found themselves when the world stopped. When the music stopped, you sat in whatever chair you were next to, is generally how I kind of picture what happened in 2020. None of his former friends believed that the anti-ICE inscription could possibly be sincere. Feeling such a serious political statement was anathema to who John was. His humor was deeply ironic, often offensive and aggressive to the point of alienation. We all know someone like this. He was most certainly an edgelord, an irony guy, one friend said. Edgelord is online speak for someone who likes to espouse edgy, nihilistic views. Asked about the inscription on the bullet, the friend said, Josh was an edgelord who wanted someone to get blamed. I think he tried his best to write something goofy to rile people up. That is why I also believe that the FBI didn't write this. I fully believe that Joshua Jahn did in fact write that on there. It seemed a little too on the nose. It wasn't witty. It was like when that guy wrote, when that MAGA guy wrote on his own garage, "Black people rule," or when the MAGA guy wrote "Left is best" on that playground. It seemed something like that. It just seemed a little corny. Another friend showed me a Facebook post describing how John had flooded his friend's comment section with rape jokes. That's nice. Playful shock humor, the friend said. John's profile on the gaming platform Steam showed the vast amounts of time he had spent playing video games, particular shooters. More than 6,000 hours on Rust. That's a problem. Regardless of what he did, that's a problem. 3,000 hours on Team Fortress 2 and 1,000 hours on Left 4 Dead 2. He even found time to play 3.5 hours in the past 2 weeks. Actually, that's not bad for 2.5 weeks. Among the dozen or so usernames he used was one reading #impeachment. When I asked, that's actually pretty funny. When I asked if this wasn't a clear reference to anti-Trump's politics, his friends recoiled at the idea that he would express opposition to Trump so sincerely and straightforwardly. Instead, they saw it as part of his broader ironic persona, poking fun at anti-Trump resistance types. And then you can see his usernames here. Sam I Am, Hanky Bob, AFK, we got some clan tags, and again, his clan tag is clan, his username is clan, his clan tag is clan tag, like, These are all irony things. He's making fun of people that wear clan tags because they're tryhards. Hashtag impeachment, harm to ongoing matter, clan tag, hanky bob, hanky bob. That said, one friend recalled that when Trump first came to power, Jahn was, quote, not a fan. Though he had contempt for mainstream politicians in general, his friends say he had more of a libertarian bent, with one recalling an interest in the libertarian figure Ron Paul. Still, the friend who recounted John's dislike of Trump insisted that there was at least a kernel of seriousness to the username. Well, of course, it's irony. It's two-faced. It presents as one thing, means another, with a slight edge of another. If it was ironic, it's that half irony, where you're half kidding, half serious, just in case. He was never really into politics, especially into politicians, said another friend, who had known John since the age of 8. He was into politics only in the 4chan sense, contrarian, provocative, boundary pushing, just for laughs, not conviction. 4chan, the anonymous message board where provocation and irony are the coin of the realm, was apparently one of John's favorite haunts. His abrasive humor is where his friends' opinions on him diverge the most, with some describing it as amusing, but others as grating, especially as his online persona began to bleed into real life. Again, we know it. I know it. You know someone like this in your life. I know someone like this in my life. This might even be you. And if it is, stop. I mostly stopped talking to him when he took his 4chan irony stuff into daily interactions, one friend told me. He was becoming unbearable. Once he dropped out of college, he had no obligation to be social, and none of us reached out to his edgelord behavior. I wasn't able to find anyone with insights into John's more recent views, something that his friends said was unsurprising given his withdrawal from social life over the past few years. If you're having trouble finding someone besides immediate family who knew him, that's part of the story, one friend said. Every mutual friend drifted away over that kind of edgelord behavior. A version of John's humor appears to be in the following YouTube video, since removed, which was when he was a high schooler, a tongue-in-cheek parody of tech advice videos. Okay, so he's obviously going after someone like, I don't know, pick a freaking tech advice guru. Hello there, Facebook user. Are you tired of scrolling through Facebook feeds mindlessly? Well, this is a solution. You can unlike all your crappy pages. Funny. The following audio recording of John bombing at stand-up comedy was shared with me. It drew a comparison by one friend to the 2009 Joker film starring Joaquin Phoenix as an off-putting loner who also tried and failed at comedy. The film culminates in a scene in which the Joker gets his revenge on the entertainment world by gunning down the host of a popular late-night TV show. Yeah, it's 3 minutes.
Hey guys, my second time doing stand-up.
Yeah, if we have time, we'll go over that. The audio from his attempted stand-up routine where he bombs now resonates uncannily with the Joker, the friend said. Ironically, John's contempt for Trump and the major political parties has bestowed them with one of the most intense partisan news cycles in recent memory. In this sense, the joke is on him, and all of us too. And that's kind of the takeaway from this, is it's a disenfranchised young man that seems to fail at whatever he puts his mind to. He dropped out of college. He might have been himself on 4chan, and that made him feel something, that made him feel good about what he was doing, what he was saying. He got laughs on 4chan, most likely, from his edgy humor, because that's what it is over there. And he figured, hey, this is just going to start bleeding into my regular life. his friends did not have the same response as his edgelord friends on 4chan, and they began to withdraw. He might have been getting the sense that they were withdrawing and began acting out, like self-sabotaging these relationships and pulling back himself. And then this person gets resentful of that. He gets resentful of those people, that they don't really know him. They don't really like him. He tries to channel this humor into stand-up comedy. And even though we didn't listen to it, he obviously bombed, and it didn't really go the way that he thought. He was not, in fact, the next Joe Rogan. It seems like when he did this tongue-in-cheek parody of tech advice YouTube videos, that was probably another thing. He's, I'm gonna put out this edgy humor. People are gonna find it funny. No one finds it funny unless you're a 14-year-old boy to maybe 20 years old. That's probably about the time when you're gonna get a response from folks like that. It's usually those age groups. Older than that, I feel like if you're still like, we gotta trigger, we gotta trigger these people, you're dealing with an emotionally stunted person. And that seems to be this guy's whole deal. So that is what's going on with this guy here, the shooter from Dallas, Texas. Again, Ken Klippenstein did a great job. I feel like he's doing more work. He's putting in more legwork than the FBI, actually being able to reach out to his real life friends, and not just looking at an online profile and saying, oh, he's a lefty. What the FBI seems to be doing, and what this administration seems to be doing, is, like I said in my first video, the administration and the FBI are headed up by social media influencers, by a game show host. They need to be the first ones out there. They need to be the first one to get clicks, and it is a brain deficiency. This is a problem. That's not how this sort of thing works. It's not how the FBI works. In fact, putting out a narrative, constructing a narrative right after the fact, under any normal circumstance, I mean, this is cut and dry, but under any normal circumstances, this would be grounds for a mistrial if and when this went to court and went to trial. You can't taint an investigation like this, but it's led by social media influencers, and they have that part of their brain broken. They need to be the first one to get the clicks. They need to be the first person to put out the photo. They need to be the first person to do anything and everything, because that's how you get clicks. You need to sit back and wait for the evidence to come out. And when the people that are supposed to be the ones putting the evidence out are being the impulsive ones and putting it out there, trying to get the clicks first, that's a recipe for problems. It's a problem now, and it will be a problem for them if this went to trial. If this person had not killed themselves, this would go to trial. And there's a very strong possibility that there could be a mistrial just based on how this investigation so far has been handled. The need to immediately put something out and say, well, ICE is on our side. They're doing our work. So if it wasn't us doing it, it must have been them doing it. Them, they, all of Stephen Miller's favorite words. And that's not helping anything, because there is a gray area. And in this seemingly politically polarized world that we inhabit right now, at least here in American politics, there is no room for nuance. There's no room for people like this guy. There's no room. It's, if you're not with us, you're against us. And if you're against us, then you're at fault. And that's not a healthy way to get anything done. And it is most certainly not a healthy way to engage in law enforcement. There needs to be a preponderance of the facts. And when something is done like this, it is imperative that those in those positions of power need to have a semblance of composure and be able to control their worst impulses in that broken part of the influencer brain, which is to be the first one to get the clicks. You need to, if I were to give Kash Patel any advice, it would be to take a moment, take a breather, and let your people do the work. You're going to have Trump calling you. You're going to have Trump blowing up your phone, calling you out on Truth Social and on X. Stop. The evidence will work out, and you will be able to form a case. But that's not how it works. That's not how this administration works. That is not how any of this is working right now, because it is broken. It does not leave room for facts. It does not leave room to wait and see, because if people wait and see, then you can't get your story out first. And if you can't get your story out first, you can't control the narrative. So that's what's been going on. And I'm glad I waited to put anything else out. But this is what's happening. It's another one of these Tyler Robinson types that feel like they are under attack. Like the system isn't working for them. The young men that feel disenfranchised, they are out there. They do feel this way. And there are so many of them across the political spectrum that you're having seemingly normal people do this. Normal young guys do this. That don't have a YouTube search history of Hassan videos. Oh, he watched 1,000 hours of Hassan. You know what I mean? Like, you're not getting that. You're not getting the guy that watched 30,000 hours of Ben Shapiro, of Charlie Kirk. You're not getting that. You're getting guys that are just, their brains are broken. And our system right now, as it is, does not seem to account for crazy, as I've said. And this is what we need to watch out for. So it doesn't seem that he was a radical leftist. He seems like he was a guy that didn't really have too many political views, but he was an edgelord, and he seems to just realize that the system wasn't working for him, and he took his anger out on the people that were closest to him. You know, the closest government organization that was closest to him. I mean, this was local. He didn't have to drive. He didn't have to do a Tyler Robinson. He didn't have to drive for 2.5 hours. It was right there in Dallas. He didn't need to go very far. He could have done this at a police station. He could have done this anywhere, any kind of a government organization building. But he chose ICE because it's highly politicized. And he knew that. He wrote anti-ICE on there. It's a meme. It's a troll. And that's what we're dealing with. It's these online trolls. They do exist in real life, and we are seeing evidence of that. That's who we're now dealing with. It's not Antifa, as much as the right would want it to be. It's not deranged MAGAs. It's just not. Like I said in my very first video, these are normal people, seemingly normal people that are just snapping because the system doesn't work for them. He was 30 years old, unemployed, and staring down the barrel of moving back in with his parents. And we're going to see more of this. We are going to see more of this. And I hope to God that we don't. But I'm generally not wrong. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to have a couple of links down in the description. If you want to give me a like and a subscribe, that would be amazing. And if you like what I'm doing here, there's a link down there that I would love it if you would check out. And I will catch you in the next one.